The sky was a deep shade of violet as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the town of Raven's Hollow in a ghostly twilight. A whisper of wind curled through the empty streets, rattling the bare branches of the withered oak trees. In the heart of this aging town stood the Blackwood Manor, an estate long abandoned, shrouded in a dark past no one dared to speak of. Until tonight, Elena Carter had never believed in ghosts. She had heard the stories growing up, how the last family to own the Blackwood Manor had vanished overnight, leaving behind only their belongings and a chilling silence. But superstition wasn't something she entertained. When the opportunity arose to move into the manor for a research project, she took it without hesitation. As a historian with an affinity for unraveling forgotten mysteries, Elena had always been drawn to the tales of Raven's Hollow, and Blackwood Manor held secrets no one had dared to uncover. The moving truck arrived late in the evening, its headlights slicing through the growing darkness. Elena stepped out of her car, taking a deep breath. The air smelled of damp earth and something else, something she couldn't quite place. As she walked toward the house, she ran her fingers over the iron gate. Cold, unyielding, pushing the gate open, a slow creak echoed through the silent night. The house loomed before her, its Victorian architecture standing defiantly against time. The grand doors swung open with surprising ease, as if the house had been waiting for her. Boxes were brought inside, one after another, until the truck finally departed, leaving Elena alone in the cavernous silence of her new home. The house smelled of dust and aged wood, and the air felt unnaturally heavy, as though it carried whispers from the past. Then she saw it. At the center of the grand foyer, sitting atop an ornate wooden chair, was a doll. A porcelain masterpiece dressed in an exquisite black gown, with long curls of ebony hair cascading down its shoulders. But it was the eyes, glossy, vacant, and disturbingly lifelike, that sent a shiver down Elena's spine. She hadn't brought a doll with her. Later that night, Elena sat in her study, flipping through a worn leather journal she had found in one of the manor's dusty drawers. It belonged to Margaret Blackwood, the last known resident of the manor before the family's disappearance in 1893. Margaret wrote extensively about her daughter, Annabelle, and a peculiar doll named Black Beauty. The journal described it as an heirloom, passed down through generations. But as Elena read on, the entries took a dark turn. Black Beauty is no ordinary doll. Annabelle says she whispers to her in the night, telling her things no child should know. Elena turned the page, her hands trembling slightly. The ink on the next entry was smudged, as though written in a frenzy. Annabelle has changed. She no longer sleeps. She watches. I feel eyes on me, even when I'm alone. Elena glanced at the doll, still perched on its chair, its glassy eyes fixed in an unblinking stare. The air around her grew thick, pressing against her chest. A faint rustling sound came from the hallway. She turned quickly, but the corridor was empty. Then she heard it. A giggle, soft and distant, yet unmistakably close. Determined to dismiss her growing unease as exhaustion, Elena retired to her bedroom. The house was vast, each corner swallowed in darkness, the walls whispering with the sighs of the wind. She placed Black Beauty in an old trunk at the foot of her bed, locking it shut. Something about those eyes made her uncomfortable. She convinced herself it was silly, just a relic of an old legend, nothing more. Yet, in the middle of the night, something woke her. The unmistakable sound of the trunk lid creaking open. Her breath hitched as she sat up. Moonlight poured through the window, casting long shadows across the room. The trunk was open, empty. Then she felt it, a light pressure at the foot of her bed. Something was sitting there. Elena's pulse pounded as she reached for the bedside lamp, but before her fingers could find the switch, the room was swallowed in darkness. The air turned icy, and a whisper floated through the silence. "You shouldn't have come here." The voice was childlike, yet hollow. It slithered through the room like a creeping fog. Elena forced herself to move, flipping the lamp on. The moment light filled the room, the presence was gone. The trunk sat closed, as if nothing had happened. But the doll, Black Beauty, was back in its chair, its glassy eyes locked onto Elena, and a sinister smile curled at the corners of its painted lips. The following days were a blur of unease. Elena tried to focus on her research, diving into the Blackwood archives at the local library. Every mention of Black Beauty she found was shrouded in mourning. The doll is a watcher. It sees into the soul. No one who possesses it leaves unscathed. Elena's nights grew restless. Shadows moved where they shouldn't. Whispers filled the stillness. And always, those glassy eyes seemed to follow her. Then came the dreams. Night after night, she saw herself standing in a dark room, a single candle flickering against the walls. A little girl stood before her, dressed in Victorian night clothes, her face obscured by tangled black hair. She held the doll to her chest, whispering something Elena couldn't understand. Until last night. Last night, the girl lifted her head, and Elena saw her face for the first time, pale, lifeless, with the same glossy, vacant eyes as the doll. And she whispered, "Let me in." The days following Elena's arrival at Blackwood Manor grew increasingly unsettling. The air inside the house felt thick, as though it carried invisible weight pressing against her chest. Shadows moved where they shouldn't, and whispers echoed through the halls, always just soft enough to leave her questioning her sanity. Despite